10 times trash talking backfired in the UFC. Climbing to the top of the UFC's ranks can be both a physical and mental challenge. Fighters tend to use trash talking to help promote their fights, and whether you love it or hate it, you can't deny it can be entertaining. However, those doing the trash talking know it comes with a risk, and sometimes it doesn't always go in their favor. Join us in this video as we look at 10 examples of when trash talking went horribly wrong in the UFC. Number 10. Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Conor McGregor was on top of the world when Nate Diaz called him out back in 2016, the previous UFC's featherweight belt, and the Irishman deemed himself to be unstoppable. McGregor was planning on moving up a weight to challenge Rafael dos Anjos for the lightweight title in an attempt to become the UFC's first champ. But when RDA pulled out, Nate Diaz stepped in to face the Irishman at UFC 196. In true McGregor fashion, he unleashed an array of verbal abuse and mental torture on Diaz in the lead-up to the fight. But the Stockton superstar was generally unfazed by McGregor's remarks, being one of few who could just shrug it off. When the pair finally met inside the octagon, Nate was already being counted out as a huge underdog. Diaz survived an early onslaught from the featherweight champ in the first round and came back to finish McGregor via a rear naked choke in the second round. This handed the Irishman his first UFC career loss in the process. Number 9. Donald Cerrone versus Alex Hernandez. After competing in the welterweight division for several fights, Donald Cerrone decided that in 2019 he would move back down to lightweight and face the prospect Alex Hernandez. While Cerrone was the favorite for the bout and clearly the most popular fighter, the relatively unknown Hernandez did not hesitate when it came to trash talking, blasting the cowboy at every opportunity. During one interview, Hernandez went as far as to claim Cerrone was nothing but a little lad swinging on a saddle with a toy gun. Unfortunately for Hernandez, we rarely see this kind of trash talking work in the fighter's favor. When the pair in the second round. No doubt Hernandez learned a valuable lesson that night: never disrespect a veteran of the game like Donald Cerrone. Number 8. Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva. Before the rise of Conor McGregor, another fighter was considered the first great king of trash talking, Chael Sonnen. Sonnen took the game of trash talking to a whole new level, and some of his finest work came in the lead-up to his fight with the former middleweight champion Anderson Silva. As the pair approached their showdown at UFC 177, Sonnen didn't hesitate to throw all the verbal abuse he could at the champ, giving us some of the most entertaining trash talk we had ever seen. He called Silva a fraud, claimed his black belt was the equivalent of a free toy at McDonald's, and explained how he was going to expose them when they met inside the octagon. When the pair finally met inside the octagon, Chael was but moments away from backing it all up. That's when the unimaginable happened. With just a few minutes to go, Silva locked in a tight triangle and Sonnen was forced to tap out. Could this be proof of karma in the MMA? Nonetheless, it was one of the most dramatic finishes to a title fight in the UFC's history. Number 7. Ronda Rousey versus Holm. Ronda Rousey was already considered one of the greatest female fighters to ever step foot inside the UFC's octagon when she was set to face Holm at UFC 193. The bantamweight champion had already defended her title 6 times in the UFC and assumed Holm would soon make it 7. Considering Rousey had never tasted defeat in her professional career, no one can blame her for having an untouchable attitude in the lead-up to the fight. While Holm was also an undefeated fighter, Rousey paid no respect to her during the various aggressive stare-downs and weigh-ins. During interviews, the champion claimed that Holm was a fake fighter and that she would run right through her when they met inside the octagon. Well, it turns out that Rousey may have been a little egotistical. Holm went on to finish her via a vicious head kick in round 2. Unfortunately, this was a serious turning point in Ronda's career. A reminder to all, when you're on top, don't forget where you came from. Number 6. Justin Gachi versus James Vick. Justin Gachi first joined the UFC back in 2017. He had an unscathed record of 17 wins and 0 losses when he made his debut for the promotion, and with that, a lot of hype as fans were eager to see how he would hold up against the world's best fighters. While Gachi started strong winning his debut, he would go on to lose his next 2 fights. Following defeat at the hands of Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, Gachi went on to accept a fight against James Vick. Vick claimed on numerous occasions that he planned to knock Gachi out when they met inside the octagon, and even mocked his fighting style. Vick went as far as to call Gachi the Homer Simpson of MMA, a remark that likely didn't sit too well with his opponent. But when the pair met on their UFC Fight Night main event, Gachi had the last laugh. And from this fight, don't poke the bear that is Justin Gaethje. Number 5. Cody Garbrandt vs. TJ Dillashaw. When Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw were first announced for UFC 217, fans knew they were in for a fight that went beyond regular business. The former teammates hadn't said a nice word to each other since Dillashaw left Team Alpha Male back in 2015. Garbrandt was adamant that he had betrayed the team by doing so, and they were scheduled to fight numerous times before it finally came to fruition at UFC 2018. In the lead up to the fight, Cody made it clear that Dillashaw was a traitor and spewed an endless amount of trash talk at him. On top of this, Cody even released an old video of a sparring session between the former teammates in which he knocked him out. Garbrandt certainly took things to the next level in terms of trash talk before the pair eventually met inside the octagon. But when the fight finally came around, Dillashaw came out on top, finishing Garbrandt via knockout in round 2. Number 4. Rosa Namajunas vs. Yana Jędrzejczyk. Rosa Namajunas was one female fighter you wouldn't want to offend. So when it was announced she would face off against a woman known for her offensive tongue, Yana Jędrzejczyk, fans were eager to see how this one would play out. Yana couldn't help but fire off some trash talk in the run-up to the fight. She called Rosa mentally unstable and claimed she was not good enough ever to have a UFC belt around her waist. But once fight night arrived, the challenger decided to let her hands do the talking. Namajunas would finish Yana just after the 2-minute mark in round 1, ending the champion's unbeaten streak in the process. Number 3. Luke Rockhold vs. Michael Bisping. Luke Rockhold became the UFC's middleweight champion back in 2015 after an impressive victory over Chris Weidman. His first title defense would be against Michael Bisping after Weidman pulled out of their rematch. He pulled out his chances and made it very clear he was planning on smashing the Brit. During the fight press conference, Rockhold went as far as to claim that no matter how many times they fought, he would finish Bisping via knockout every time. The champion went on to spew insults at his opponent right up until the two finally met inside the cage at UFC 199. However, things didn't go as Rockhold had imagined. Number 2. Ben Askren vs. Jorge Masvidal. When Ben Askren first joined the UFC, fans were eager to see if the former ONE and Bellator welterweight champion could put his money where his mouth was. As soon as he joined the promotion, he quickly began calling out just about everyone in his division and trash-talking along the way. After a